everyone, welcome back to the office. Today it is unscripted. I was supposed to have a working session with a good friend of mine, Dr. Ken Serota. We were supposed to do that privately, but since we're two players and say, what the heck, let's embrace the screen and do this. So we are bringing Dr. Ken with us. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey Buck, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great, thank you. So this is working well. So people
Good.
know we are looking at to write a book together. I'll let you came up with the title Touchstone, and we're supposed to talk about how we start to write a book within 14 days. And since well, people have words, let's do that online. That was the idea. So you
Sure.
know, this is some script. Ken hadn't had a clue that would be live today. It was supposed to be his break,
No,
but
no, it's
since
9:17 in the morning and my heart stopped already.
so um if I let you start, the idea of having a book was more my idea, but you came up with the idea or the core of the book to write about stress. Can
Sure.
you tell
It's
us why stress?
why? Well, about I guess 9 months ago, when I started doing these interviews on the dentists around the world, their lives. Obviously, COVID came up because it's been dominating everything we do for the last 9 months. And one of the people I interviewed is an absolutely fascinating individual, Katalin Nagy from Hungary. I mean, if you wanted to list what she's done in her life between research and education and Fulbright scholar, et cetera, she's like just the most remarkable individual. Got to know her briefly, and at some point in time, we connected along the context of, well, it went through various stages, but it ended where we were both aware of how our friends were suffering, people who love to lecture, love to travel, love to meet their friends. It wasn't happening. At the same time, the obvious concern, dentist offices were shut down. The lockdown went on for several months when they had to learn how to wear PPE to work again. And they also had to restructure their offices. So we got to talking, and she sent me some papers to read, and somehow we came to a mutual decision that I was going to do a PhD on social sciences, and it was entitled "The Impact of COVID-19 on Psychological Distress in the Dental Team." And I spent, I don't know, several months, I guess, trying to figure out the structure of the study, create a survey. We decided that we would do it between Hungary because of her obvious presence there and mine in North America. When I met Bach, this enormous world of his just opened up. And the fact that when I interviewed him, the fact that he had written like, I don't know, what was it, 72, 75 books in just this incredible period of time. And obviously was shooting for the Guinness Book of World Records, to say nothing of the quality of the books. I mean, it wasn't just knocking off books. They were extraordinary. So I told him what I was doing, and he said, well, why don't we write a book? And I said, okay. He can knock it off in such a short period of time because he's got that skill set and that knowledge. And I figured it was going to take me 3 years to write the great American novel. However, if you go to Amazon, a couple of hours, you can learn how to write a book in 3 days. So we talked about what it would be, and the idea was touchstone, because touchstone is what is nice to have when you're under duress. You can reach out and touch something that has meaning to you, and so that is the magic of what a touchstone does. Could be a person, place, thing, whatever it is, but at the end of the day, your access to something like that keeps you going, keeps you positive, keeps your energy levels up. And so we also took the concept of what's called psychological smog, which is what goes on in cognitive behavioral therapy. So many of us that get overwhelmed, myself included, are lost in a psychological smog. We don't know where to look. We are imagining things, or we imagine people are saying things that we're not understanding or we're taking the wrong way. So I decided that what we could do is adapt the premise of the thesis to the premise of cognitive behavioral therapy, or what they call, dialectical behavioral therapy. So we came up with concepts that were based on the survey. And basically it was resilience to stress, quality of life, vectors of concern inducing stress, financial considerations, the implications of what lockdown is doing, not only to dentists now, but older dentists who had planned retirement, who were coming out of school with debt and now facing this unknown world. Who do you believe? Government, social media, whatever news media is pumping out the information, the misinformation, the disinformation. You know, there's a politics to it. And leadership, both on your part, your contribution to leadership within your profession, and obviously within the team that you've assembled. And the other thing, which I think is, in terms of dentists, you've got to cope with all these ergonomic changes. So, for example, crazy example, I'm wearing Invisalign to correct what happens when you get old and your teeth move. So I went to my orthodontist, everything was fine, we're doing it, and then I had a follow-up appointment 2 weeks ago. And I walked into his office and it looked like a construction site on the floor of a building. Plastic is hanging, he's got, you know, the rods holding up the plastic. The whole office, and the interior of the office was literally looked like the aftermath of a bomb going off. And he had just under construction. Well, he had no choice because that week, the guidelines came out of the regulatory body and they said, well, you got to do this. Orthodontists have open concept facilities. You cannot work in an open concept facility anymore. And it's not enough to put up barriers because they have to be floor to ceiling. And if you're already doing barriers, you have to put up walls. It just makes sense. And you'd have to have doors that open and close. So he was forced in a period of what 3-4 months to rebuild his entire office and work in a different way. What he's wearing, it's going to take 6 to 12 months for people to get used to this, quality of work to stay the same, because you're working in an environment where you have masks on, they cause dermatitis, hard to breathe. They're coming up with all kinds of new masks that actually have air filters, airflow that are attached to filters. For a dentist who's been used to doing things a certain way, we always dealt with, excuse me, we always were protective of ourselves. We wore masks, glasses. When you're doing implants and such, you covered yourself. But you've got all of these new stress factors happening too. So that's the intent of the book that we're going to write. Where do you find your touchstone during this horrific period? The thesis could have ended when COVID theoretically stopped. But COVID is now worse than it was. And so they're locking down in Britain, they're locking down in France, they're locking down in Hungary, other Eastern European countries. Germany is a soft lockdown. And North America is what it is. We're living in a very crazy political time. But in truth, North America may very well have to lock down 100,000 cases a day. Dentists are not what people assume. Dentists themselves, I think the percentage that got positivity from COVID is less than 1%. But the fear obviously is the aerosols, the transmission from patients to family members. Same thing applies to the staff. So with the surge, it hasn't gone away. So the concept of the book is you're going through all of this, analyze it, address what is happening, try to find coping strategies to deal with it. And the way to sort of make sure there is a constant theme is to have a touchstone. Like, what is that touchstone for you? It could be your child. It could be knowing that your parents are well. It could be a place that you go to just meditate, just to be calm, to settle, to ground, whatever it happens to be. But everybody needs a touchstone. It's something that when you are there or you touch or whatever, you feel safe. Your stress levels disappear. It calms you. And that is going to be the essence of the book that we're writing, Buck. So there you go.
I would like to add something new on this because this is going to be my 73rd book, and I'm just trying to mix up the cards a little bit, so it's going to be fun. We decided to do this live today, and the audience, it's mainly white coats. You're a dentist, you're a doctor. I think that will be tailor made to you. Um, as he mentioned, Dr. Serota will be looking this as a thesis way. So it is very structured. It is trying to understand what are the stress, what are the key factors, and how we can fight it. I'll be sharing with you my experience, how I have used stress all my life as a cornerstone or leverage. Um, but I would like to have a dialogue with all of you. If we're starting today, this is ground level. If at home you would like to be part of this, write to us. be part of the conversation. Give us the team, and I'm not promising anything because there's 14 days, and as soon as it starts, we will not stop until the book is complete. So we have to be very flexible and quick to act. But it would be very cool if we can have this dialogue with you, so we understand what are your issue, what also you're looking for. I don't know what you think of that, Ken. Is that a great idea to invite the public to pitch in?
I mean, well, this won't be a thesis that's going to follow the thesis outline, but I think at this particular point in time, um, there's too much COVID fatigue. And as a result, I don't think we're dealing with it properly. And so I think it's probably beneficial to hear from people who say, well, this is overblown. I think it's crazy. I need to work. My children need to go to school. And that's great, except they still haven't come to grips with the virology. The promised vaccine is not there yet. Herd immunity is nonsense. You'd have to have 80% of the population sick in order to do it. The logic is that we didn't adhere to the obvious: masks, cleaning, like constantly cleaning your hands, and social distancing. I understand the economics. I appreciate that. Nobody wants to suffer financially. But I think it was a question of, you don't go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. I think people said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going crazy. I need to get out. I'll wear a mask, or they'll forget to wear a mask. So I think for people to contribute their perspective, what they're prepared to do, what they're prepared to cope with, why they don't believe it, for argument's sake. I mean, there's all kinds of people disputing the science. There's overreaction on the part of public health people, but how's that possible? The United States is now up to 100,000. Ontario's increasing dramatically. I know they look at positivity rates, number of people dying, this sort of thing, but that's not an issue. You get sick with this, and there are residual morbidities associated with it: your lungs, your heart, your kidneys. And obviously the problem with people dying is their comorbidities: obesity, heart disease, diabetes, whatever. But let's assume they survive. They're already demonstrating that people that survive this are still going to be cognitively impaired. They're going to have issues with their pulmonary volume, that sort of thing. I don't think we can dismiss it. I think perhaps the problem has been that locking down was a good way. Okay. But, this thing is raging. At least we have to be considerate. It's like the business about, I don't want to wear a mask. It's it affects my civil rights. Well, yeah, but you're then a viral spreader. So it would be interesting to hear people's commentary in terms of what they feel they are willing to do to mitigate their stresses, and to see whether legitimately they see this, the big picture. Vaccines will not be out until maybe the middle of next year. All kinds of industries are going to suffer dramatically. Can the governments afford to continue to print money? But I can't imagine that the world will return to any semblance of normal prior to maybe 2023. Dental offices will function, medical offices at issue. I just don't know. The world is going to change. It shows in Europe particularly how when you're cavalier, the rallies that are being given one of the politicians, you've got spreaders, people are dying. I think my concern, and the reason this book makes sense to me, is, are we going to get to a point in our society where we say it's okay for people to die? That's okay. People are going to die. People die anyway. That's life, whatever. People die in order to keep things at status quo. That is a grotesque society. It's well on the way to selective genocide. Call it what you will. It almost has a fascist tone. So I'd like to hear from people as to what their thoughts are. Not the silliness that goes on in Facebook where everybody has their, skewed perspective from QAnon on down, but how they're going to live their lives and what can be done to mitigate things that are not right. Keeping their children in school, keeping their elderly parents alive. And so that's what I'd like to hear from the public is, if we establish the parameters that relate to stress, then at least tell us what you think your willingness to participate in controlling the virus is, or your unwillingness to contribute to anticipating what the virus is going to do. I think everybody's voice needs to be heard, And if there's a potential for common ground rather than the divisiveness that we're seeing south of the border and elsewhere. I mean, I'm very quick to judge America because my kids live there, but everywhere in the world is seeing it. So it would be interesting to see if we could finally act like human beings and not fight for political reasons or whatever, and just say, okay, this is a common problem. Let's figure it out. And quite honestly, I don't think it's just going to be the governing bodies that are going to figure it out. I'm not convinced that they really have. They're not reading the pulse of their population. I don't believe that they are. I think they got draconian and people rebelled. So now they're going, well, okay, we'll throttle back. Well, that allows people out of jail. I don't think they understand how to control this yet. And perhaps a whole bunch of people writing books may make a difference. Who knows? But that is the thrust of what the next 14 days of our lives look like, Bob.
But Ken, if I hear you right, is I thought that this will be more focused to the health professional, but based on what you just said here, this is open to everyone. Everyone is
I think
affected by this.
I think so. I think the primary focus is to deal with health professionals, our own profession, but by the same token, the population that you're reaching also has to go to the dentist, right? And I don't think you can. I'm just curious as to what people's perspective is, and maybe we can relate it to dentists. We won't have time to do a survey, but dentists are people too, most of them, and I would think that yes, we're focusing this towards the dental team because that's the nature of the thesis. But I don't think it can be that selective. It's selective if you're doing a PhD because it has to follow a certain, your investigative protocol. But when you write a book that's going to go out on Amazon or however we choose to do it, Barnes and Noble, however you choose to do it, I don't. I think you have to hear from everybody, and then you can distill it down, find out where it applies. But at the very least, it is directed because of the thesis, from my standpoint, to a dental population. But I still think you need to hear it because the people who are expressing their opinion go to dental offices. Not as much as they should, perhaps, but I think that is yet another. You're coping with your patients too. So add that into the mix of chapters. Like, how do you cope with people who are already frightened, who are suffering economically, who are cultural? I mean, I'm intrigued of all of the things that the governments have done. They have never approached this on a cultural basis. People from different parts of the world have different responses to disease conditions. They are, third world countries are far more tolerant because they're used to. South Asia, for example, has the highest index of cancer in the world. Like crazy, but the incidence of cancer in India is off the charts. Well, their cultural perspective on disease may be different than North Americans. So I think would be interesting to hear from a different demographic as well. And that applies to dentists as well. Male-female perception, people who are new to the country, immigrant dentists, and I don't mean immigrants, but people who come from other countries, their parents had a philosophy, people who were born in Canada, different story. But a lot of professionals are migrating from other countries. So there's so many variables, so many factors. And I think the government needs to look at it because maybe they can handle the perception differences if they really try and break down the population and approach people with that layer of compassion and empathy that we're not all the same. We will see. We got 14 days to prove it.
Actually, what I'm gonna say here is gonna be dangerous, but since I've been doing this for the last 9 months, why not?
Hey, go for it. Of course, it's dangerous. Without danger, there's no fun.
I love the fact that we are starting from a dental team because you and I are from that dental background. But let's not stop there. Let's bring this out and touch everyone.
Yeah.
Also, we're talking about our governments. I know that when we started this in March, everybody was behind the government because let's just make an effort and fight this. And I remember I said in a few books at that time, it's for the first time of my lifetime, every interests are aligned. This lasted for about 6 months, 6 weeks, and after that, things start to crumble down. And it's how sad that is. And today, we look at our governments, whatever we think of them, but it's all about criticism. what they do wrong, what could do better. But something hasn't changed. It's for the last 6 months we put a large part of the population on bench. Some of them have come resumed their work, but as we're resuming our work, we're seeing that we're taking care of this part of what's life
Yeah.
is. While life it's this big and it's affecting everybody at this stage. What I would like to do, if you agree with this, Ken, and at home, if you agree with us, please join. I'm not looking for a fight. I think that
I am.
we have our hands full. I am not looking to criticize anybody because I'll be the first one that
No,
can be
no.
criticized. But when you are when you are working, focus on something. You don't see anything else than what you do, and
Yeah,
eventually you become obsessed with that. I think that this is what our governments are facing today. It's they're trying to look at the death toll and to keep that to the minimum. They're looking at the hospital and trying to keep the flow going and circulating. And the
right.
rest of it, it's hard for them to just see at every to look at everything. And I can tell you that in Canada, our government is doing so much for our business. It's
Yeah,
never
they
enough.
are.
It's
Canadians
never
are
enough,
amazing.
but they're doing so much. And I think that they need a thank you. They need also some help. So what I would like to do here is to do something that we're not criticizing anybody, but
No.
let's say that we have so much intelligence on the bench. Let's put that into activity and say that okay, what I promise you is that until I die, I will not give up. This is the spirit I'm gonna attack this book with. So stress to me, it's something that yeah, it's on the table. What we do with
Actually,
it?
I'm sorry, Bob. Can I interrupt you for 1 second? I apologize. I don't mean to. I wasn't being flipped by saying I do. The one thing that has been apparent both in the United States and Canada is dentists were told what to do. They were told to lock down. They were concerned about aerosols. They came up with PPE. They came up with barriers and shields. What was not done was dentists were not treated as first responders. Dentists have a huge aggregate database of patients. If there are, I think, what is it? There are 19,000 dentists in Ontario, 9,000 in Quebec. I don't know about the rest of the country. But, the outreach to patients is extreme. But what was not happening was dentists were not doing COVID tests. They were now doing rapid tests. I know they were only bringing in emergencies, but in the United States, definitely not. Why? We're dentists who have databases. They reach their patients on cell phones, and there's a whole transition in how dentists communicate, teledentistry, and such. I don't understand the rationale that dentists were not considered frontline providers, protectors, providers, whatever, first providers. They just were not brought into the team. So I do have a problem with that. And I don't know whether it's the association or the government, but I think if you're going to fight to lock down people, then also use another asset that you have. And you could have used a dentist to reach out to his entire client base across the country. Now, it wouldn't have represented 30 or 33 million people, but it would have represented enough to make a dent. And that dent could go expansively. And I think that is, I don't think it's a negative. I don't think it's a criticism. It's a suggestion which is at any point it makes value. I think that was just for whatever reason, they don't think of dentists as first responders, medical, nurses, hospitals, but dentists have that potential. And I don't think it was reached.
I think last April we had a summit covering that, and it was suggested that dentists should be doing the test, and a few weeks later it was legal in Canada, but throughout their facility, not through our clinics. I think that there's still a long way to go, but this is something that we have to ask each other. Say, as dentists, and now we're going back to the dental core, we are part of a medical system. We have so
Mhm.
many infrastructure on the ground, and I'll spend the last 5 years of my life trying to say that it doesn't make sense to us to keep as much infrastructure, but it's there already. But this is not the first time that to respond to a health crisis we are unutilized, and I think that
Yeah.
the answer is not just from the people taking the power. Personally, I'll be asking the question to ourselves. Look in the mirror and say, why have we been left aside? And this is not just Here in Canada, it's not just in the United States, it's across the world. We have been benched. And I've been speaking, I spoke with a lot of people, and we are asking that the question: are we the elite that we think we are? Are we that important? There's that type of DR. What is it for? And now you understand my process going through writing the power of DR, relevancy, to talk about our profession as a whole. I think that the problem is not just from the power, maybe it's from within. This is just an opinion, but again, when you write books, when you host, you try not to get your opinion. You try to find the facts, to find a trend. And to everybody listen to us today, and this was I'm so happy that you brought this on the table, because stress, I think it's part of the way we see ourselves and the way we behave. And this is a big question to us as dentists. If we go to the dentist side of this, why have been we been left aside? There's a reason to
Don't
it.
know.
There's a reason to this,
I
and I
don't.
think that part of the reason is within.
I don't know. I think it's how we're sort of like the orphan. Well, let me put it this way. I think the problem has always been that they think dentists are very lucrative. We're private practitioners. We rely on insurance, but it's a very lucrative profession. We make all kinds of money. It's not life and death. And maybe that was a problem. Maybe they see COVID as life and death, and dentists don't fit that health care model. But in my opinion, it was a huge mistake. You had, I don't know how many dentists there are in Canada, I don't know, 30,000 or whatever it is. But I don't know. I don't get it. Like, why not make that effort? Why not go to that trouble? It just seems so natural. If you can go to a hospital and stand in line to get a test in Ontario, which is quick, you get the response back in 24 hours. Why couldn't you have gone to your dental office? Being called by your dentist, come in, they'll stand behind the barrier, they'll do the same things they're doing in the hospital. Why not just add those numbers? They didn't do it, and I don't understand it. But that there are far smarter people than I am who have a much better understanding of public policy and logistics. I guess that is the sense of it. They didn't have to build facilities; they already existed. So I don't get it. I don't understand what the problem was.
You see, at home, we need you. Pitch in. Have your ideas, and think that what we can do here is at least prepare that for the what's coming. This is what we're suggesting. This is the people coming together, and let's try to back our governments a little bit. If they run out of
Yeah.
ideas, these are the ideas on the table.
Well, and Buck, I'm sorry, but realistically, there's a surge. Like, this isn't like it's going away. There's a surge. So the time is now. If you're dealing with a surge, the numbers are going up, regardless of the positivity rates and rates of death and this sort of thing. They're running out of the ability to contact trace. Why don't you just say, look, we've got rapid testing now, arrange for distribution to dentists through their associations, whatever. And okay, we didn't do it to begin with, but why don't we do it now? What's wrong with doing it now?
So again,
And that's the function.
we have to go back to the idea of the book, because right now there's two theme of the book. There's the stress factor, and now there's the reaction to COVID. How are we
Mhm.
gonna make this work? I'm not sure how we're gonna tell the narrative of this book now.
Well, I think the focus remains on dealing with coping strategies, both as it pertains to dentists and as the client base. I don't think we're going to have dual tracks. I think the focus remains the same. The only difference is it would be very interesting to hear what people outside that sphere think. Because as I say, dentists are people too. It depends on who you're talking to. But I do think that we need to hear the voice of people outside, which will probably help us shape what we're trying to do. I kind of digressed into my annoyance with the fact that dentists are not first responders, but that's a completely secondary issue. You have a platform, maybe somebody will hear it. But in terms of the book, it is about a healthcare provider, what they're facing, what their patients are facing, what their team members are facing, the impact of all of this in terms of developing coping strategies for a specific silo of healthcare provider, a dentist. And the people that would write in or make comments are their patients. So why don't we hear from the patients as well, and then collate all that data and try and incorporate it into the book?
So we agreed before we start this interview that it's going to be 17 or chapters each. And
Right.
going through what you said, I think that there's two that's coming. There's the economical stress and also the COVID fatigue, which are two of the
Yeah.
stress
Well,
you
yeah.
mentioned. What would be the five other themes that you would like to address?
I mean, above and beyond the ones that I listed.
No, let's go through those because right now everything that we say now
Okay.
will
So
be set so it goes into the book. So there's the economic stress, there's the COVID fatigue, and what would be five more that you like to address?
well, I think it's important to look at resilience, trust and resilience. So trust is a chapter because do you trust what you're hearing on social media? Do you trust what the government is telling you? Do you trust what you're hearing in media, period, like news reports? Not, the ones that have overt political predispositions or predilections. What you're hearing from your government, what you're hearing from your dental associations. Are they providing you resilience and trust? So that's actually a twofold chapter. What are the resilience factors? How do you cope? What are the strategies that you utilize? Mental health awareness, mindfulness, being in the moment, grounding, this sort of thing. So that's a chapter. And the vectors of concern, the time of uncertainty, misinformation, confusion, the levels of preparation, were they ready? As I mentioned, cultural and socioeconomic concerns, and dealing with that relates to elderly patients. A lot of cultures keep their parents in the home. They don't put them away in a retirement home or keep them for 24-hour care. A lot of them look after their parents. And so there is that as a concern. And that applies French Canada, people who of Italian ethnicity. The financial considerations. Sorry, somebody forgot to shut off our alarm and walked in the front door. There we go. Apologize. Like in terms of financial considerations, you have this problem where your team members, they live month to month in many cases. That's been reality. Suddenly they're laid off. The government is giving them CERB, but how long is CERB going to stay? Dentists themselves, they shut down. They were given, there were all this sort of business scenarios where the government kicked in 50%, and I don't really know all the specifics, but at the end of the day, what happens when the government kind of runs out of money? The United States hasn't given them a stimulus package. It's still sitting in Congress. So lost job, lost insurance benefits, et cetera. You're having a economic restructuring. That's a huge concern. Younger dentists, older dentists. And again, as I mentioned, resilience is one thing, but a separate chapter is who do you believe? Look at the data that's come out from government, what you're hearing on social media, the nonsense that comes out on social media. They decry the experts, the dismissal of science. The dental societies, are they draconian? In leadership, both from the team, from your team members, from your associations, what kind of support are you getting from the dental industry, and just the overall sense of who is leading this. It's one thing to be the boss in your office, but if you're getting orders from other people that don't make sense, that upsets your appetite too. I
We're
mean,
like,
really,
huh? We're gonna cut this out.
yeah, I'm going to end up getting shot, which is fine. I don't care. I'm old enough. And then ultimately, how are you coping with the ergonomics? You're going to work. When you went back, you're going to work in a completely different environment. So for argument's sake, take a dentist who has to stop working for 6 months. When he goes back, or she goes back, more she's than he's, their hands, their skill set, their cognitive powers, their every mind-hand coordination, it's not the same. Not the same. Now you're adding on layers of PPE, restrictive conditions. You're in a box, got air filters, noises. All of a sudden, your work environment changed. How are you going to cope? That's a stressor. So I think that breaks down the chapters that we're talking about.
I love the fact that we're two different person and we can build over respect. I'm gonna address this differently. It's if we go through this, it's all about what it's asked of us. What is what more effort we have to do, and within this crisis, nobody's taking care of how do we feel, how do we we get out in the morning saying that, yeah, I'm gonna make a difference again. And even if what I'm doing what I've been told, and now I have to redo it again. I'm gonna address that one. I'm gonna put myself in the shoes of, yes, I'm a dentist, an entrepreneur, I have those kind of stress. But you mentioned a lot of different people in different situations and different roles. I think that if this book could make any sense to anybody, I think we have to take at least the time to understand what everyone is going through, and maybe from there we might able to heal. Because if by the end of the day there's something we know how to do is to heal people. And basically, I love the idea that it's going from a book about stress to erection to COVID. It's This is our challenge. We're dentists. We've been benched, all of us,
Yeah,
and
more lives than
we're saying that why haven't been we've been included in the reaction or the response to this. And yes, you can cry about it, and that won't change a thing, and you will not be
yeah.
included by the next wave either. Or this is our challenge. This is our chance as dentists to come together to say that, okay, we had the time to think this through, and this is what we're proposing: fighting stress. Um,
Well, you're going to be thinking about it for a long time because obviously with the surge, they may have to shut dental offices down. They are doing it in Italy. They're doing it in UK. I don't know what they're going to do here, but I know that we have to stay on the side of being PC, politically correct. But what bothers me the most is I think because the dentists were, I understand the guidelines, but in a certain level, we were infantilized because we were not part of the voice of the determination. And I think that is essential. I appreciate the government has responsibility to all people, but you know, we're in the trenches. We do the work, right? The people who are sitting in associations, they issue
that's what I'm saying,
guidelines.
Ken. Let's use that
Yeah,
frustration.
let's make a
Let's use that
change.
frustration and to build something good about it. And
Yeah,
we're gonna back
absolutely.
up government. So when they run out of ideas, what to do next? We've done it.
Yeah,
It might work, it
I
might not
think.
work, but at least we have put together our thoughts as
Yeah.
society, as a community, and say, okay, this is how we're gonna address it. And let's address this at an individual level. Because as dentists, we're very good teaching, treating 1% of the time, right? Let's do this. Let's
Yeah.
address this not just as the whole or the needs of the many outgrow the one of the few. It's let's address everybody. You have to live through this. What is your
Mhm.
stress? How can we cope with this? And how can we help?
The end of the book ends like this, in my opinion. If we can restructure the involvement of the dentist, then literally you are restructuring the interrelationship between organized dentistry and the people in the trenches. So 5 years from now, I would like to have a far more egalitarian construct with dental associations, governing bodies, and the dentists themselves. I think that given technology, electronics, the ability to e-vote, all that kind of stuff, times have changed. I think that we are in a position to not only do better, do more, but to do it from the people who are fighting the war, right? That's not a traditional military approach or governmental approach. But I do think, as you know, and this sounds so stupid, you know, we're a democracy, but we have a voice, and it goes beyond writing a check to get your license. We have a voice, and that voice should be amplified. The voice of the individual dentist should be amplified, and I think that that will change our profession for the better, for the good, better, best, and it will make a difference, especially for the young generation coming up. Now I'm done, but you know, for the people who are coming up, go for it.
I hope that this touched you at home, and we're having fun playing on the air. But the intention was to create some interest from your part to pitch in, write to us, and I think that this will take more than 2 weeks. But as I told Ken, I have a short attention span. That's my handicap. If we start, I'm
Yeah.
done after 14 days to the max. But this is what I'll be promising. It's we will have a good response from you. Um, let's gather your thoughts, your texts, your chapters for maybe a chapter
Mhm.
at home two. This is gonna be volume one. We're gonna
Yeah.
start this, and I think that today we have a lot of ideas on how to start this. But we would love for you to get involved because it's not two doctors that's gonna make a difference. But if all of us come together and say that, okay, this is how it can work, maybe this time the fact that we've been benched would have helped us to improve on our situation and to help the world while we were at it.
Yeah,
I know
there's
you,
2
you have
million
that the
dentists in the
frustration.
world.
Write
Yeah.
for us, react on it.
Yeah. Like if you look at this internationally, there's approximately 2 million dentists in the world. I'm not giving dentists the sort of preeminent position, a role as healthcare providers, but you've got an army of 2 million people around the world. So let them march, give them an opportunity to contribute. That is just logical. Don't give them guns, give them rapid testing and save the day.
We halfway through, and usually I always reserve a surprise. Kent, last time we spoke, you asked me to join the Dental Shark Tank, which I say yes to, and I'm not even sure what it involves yet. But here, let me share it with you and our audience. That was supposed to be just for you, but let's bring some hope into this because if there's one thing I know, it's about leveraging and hope. We're talking to dentists at this stage. Yes, we're thinking you can change the world, and also we are. I am thinking that it is the best time for you to realize who you really are and the assets you are sitting on. So what I'm gonna bring here is a very small clip of the alpha class that it was supposed to be a master class, and I did that mistake on air. Say I'll call it an alpha class. It sounds great. So this is a little clip of the alpha class of getting dentists and doctors to become millionaires that I'm gonna share with you. It was supposed to be just for Ken, but since you're there, what the heck?
Sure, you want to make me a millionaire? Let's go for it. All right, love it. Sounds like a
So
plan.
here it is.
Financial leverage. Even if that sounded very theoretical, believe me, it was nothing but practical. Get through your mind to cut your anchor and false beliefs of perfection and predictability and embrace your precision and flexibility instead. Now, what if I tell you that you've already traded so much for your medical degree that you won't need to change 180 degrees to succeed in those waters? That $1 million investment, well, since I do not want you to spend 10 years sacrificing for your entry ticket, borrow it. As you are borrowing it, your emotions will be aligned with the reality of the market. As you invest money that you borrow, what are your emotions? Fear. That should keep you grounded to the reality of the new water in you are swimming in. In other words, it will keep you sharp and on the right track. Then, I told you that everything you are holding will be melting. That's because the tide will change, and whatever you bought today shall lose its value eventually. But before it does, it will gain in value first. Since you are borrowing money, time is against you. The longer you borrow, the more interest you'll pay. Even if the gain eclipses the interests by far, if you did your homework and got your maths right, the fact that you need to repay that money with interest will keep you on your toes and keep you in check to sell before it comes crashing down. And make no mistake, it will eventually. Life is like a buffet. Sit in, eat as much as you want, clean your place and leave so someone else can eat. Dr. Kien Qual Deep. That's what I learned from my first mentor in finance. To not be afraid to leave money on the table for the other one. I still have eaten plenty. So go to your banker and ask him how much you can borrow. You know that $1 million in loan at 7% interest and amortized over 30 years will cost $6,700 a month. You have that $6,700. Now package it, so you have $1 million to invest right away. What is $6,700 for us, dentist doctor? Maybe 3 to 4 more hours of operation in a week? Maybe a new expertise to learn as orthodontic, cosmetic implants, or more time doing what we already do best. The choice is yours, and there is no perfect recipe. Some will choose to trade in their time and their sweat. That's okay. Some will choose to gain more expertise, trading time and money at first, but then gain time and leverage with a new expertise. Just do not forget that it was a means. The end was still to leverage yourself to borrow that first million and have money working for you for a change.
So I get better at it. I got a taste of easier money. Not easy money, but easier money. And I do it again and again, and faster, and bolder and bolder. You have to understand today that wealth is not within the money, it's within the speed. If you can touch that kind of power, it's incredible. The feeling and the possibility you can have access to.
Whatever you decide, implement it right away and react to your results. Staying in control. Unlike what you learned before, staying in control does not mean to reduce the environment to a size that you can master. On the contrary, choose a bigger pond, and just like a fish, allow yourself to grow into that pond. Then, change for a bigger one, until you reach the ocean. Your chance is that you can shape your reality as you see fit. Just know that there is always a trade, opportunity and growth for security. And what is there to master, since the condition will always be changing? Yourself, of course. Learn to free and to master your emotions. Know that suppressing them was a lie. Even if you succeed, it took much energy to heal and to keep the emotions locked away, and they will come back to haunt you the day you are too weak and tired to hold the doors close. Make allies of them. Your emotions are the deeper part of yourself. Put things in motion and enjoy the ride as you are expanding your perspectives and your skills along the way. Financially, go sit down with your banker. Ask him how big of a loan you can afford. He might ask what the loan is for. Tell him a story, a true one, in which he can follow the logic. Show him your ledger, show him that you've prepared for this meeting. As you gave him the opportunity to be your miracle worker, help him to help you. No matter how much your banker will come back to you with, stay calm and in control of all your emotions, and ask him for double that amount.
As fast as possible, being smart. As bold as possible, staying true to yourself.
It's all very impressive. I'm curious as to how this book will evolve. I know that.
Hello? Ken? Ken, are you there?